This is episode E of Spirit Mark. Welcome to a mysterious and dangerous journey into forgotten memories. In this episode, Aseya teams up with a mysterious hacker named Leah to open the gate of memory. But what she finds on the other side is a blood-written message from her mother, and a name she's never heard before. If you love mystery, suspense, and a hint of girl-on-girl tension, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any twists in the next episodes. Question of the day. Do you think Leah is really trying to help Aseya, or is she hiding something? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The night wind carried tiny grains of sand, like some hidden whisper coming quietly from beyond the dunes. It brushed past my cheek, rustled the tent fabric, and made the fire flicker. Every flicker of the flame seemed to carve a new line of worry into my mother's face. In that light, her side profile looked unfamiliar, like she wasn't the same woman who used to sing me lullabies at night. Her hands were shaking, deep, bone-deep trembles, like even her marrow was afraid. She held out an old, yellowed page toward the tent entrance. A blurry figure stood outside, only showing a pale wrist, almost like a bone. They didn't speak. There was just this heavy, suffocating silence between them, made of fear. She can know. My mother whispered, so soft her voice nearly melted into the crackling of the fire. It was like she was scared that saying the words out loud would turn them into a curse. This will ruin her life. I was only 8 years old then. Sitting in the corner of the tent, hugging my knees, my forehead resting on a worn-out blanket. That page was just a piece of paper, but I swear I saw it shiver in her hand, like it was begging in silence. Before leaving, she looked back at me. But her eyes weren't filled with a mother's love, they held a goodbye. A silent, forever kind of goodbye. The moment she stepped out of the tent, the world went completely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. All I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. That night, I lost my mother. And every night after that was swallowed by that same silence. I thought I would forget. But I was wrong. 16 years later, I was in the basement storage room of the Natural History Museum in London, running my fingers over a piece of paper so familiar it hurt. It lay quietly under the light, the cracks, stains, and fragile, frayed edges were exactly like the page burned into my memory. I wasn't supposed to be there. My badge didn't give me access to this level. S-class archived artifacts were only meant for inner academic committee members. But in the middle of the night, I swiped someone's access card, just to see it again. The paper that ruined my childhood. Aseya, are you insane? Gabriel's voice shouted in my ear through the headset. That typical British mix of restraint and contempt made his tone icy. That's an S-class artifact. You have no clearance to touch it. I didn't answer. My fingers paused over one of the cracks, gently tracing it, as if the time-torn lines could whisper something to me. Deep within the torn fibers, there was something speaking, not in sound, but like a pull from within my bones. I know, but it. I whispered, eyes still locked on the page. It's calling to me. Silence. Gabriel didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was cold. Report to the office tomorrow morning. Bring your resignation. I thought I'd be scared. But I wasn't. I just shut off the comms, and quietly placed the page back where it belonged. It had been in my hands too long. Even the air around me seemed to carry its scent, old ink, dust and the faintest trace of blood. That night, I didn't go home. And that night, I never looked back. A few days later, at dawn, I arrived in Istanbul. The sunlight broke through the morning clouds and spilled over the ancient buildings, like a layer of warm gold leaf draped over the city. I stood at the entrance of the old town, dressed like a buyer from an antique auction, long black coat, silk gloves, light gold sunglasses. I looked like I'd stepped out of some old movie, just to appear in a scene that fate had already written. Beneath an abandoned mosque, hidden underground, was a black market. Neon lights mixed with the smell of mold. Collectors, hunters, and information brokers from around the world whispered, traded intel, bargained over prices. Artifacts rested quietly in glass cases, waiting to be bought, or betrayed. Then I saw it, that page, exactly as I remembered. The only difference, a few reddish-brown marks across it. Maybe blood. Or maybe claw marks left by time itself. Just as the auctioneer raised the gavel, I moved. I don't even remember how I got in, how I jumped the glass, how I grabbed the page. Just screams, someone pulling a gun, someone lunging at me with a knife. The blade cut into my left arm as I ran, clutching the paper, blood dripping from between my fingers. And in that moment, time stopped. Everything went white. I could hear my heartbeat echo, drawn out like it was underwater. Then I saw the stone chamber. Symbols were carved into the walls, runes I'd never seen before, but somehow felt deeply familiar, like they'd been dug out of a dream I forgot long ago. In the center stood my mother. Her clothes were worn, her hair messy, but she looked calm, completely unafraid. She stared ahead, but it was like she could see me, through time, through space. "Aseya," she whispered, her lips trembling. "You can come back." There was no anger in her voice. Just a kind of pain I couldn't name. It sounded like regret or maybe a plea. I tried to move closer. But her face faded away before I could. When I woke up, the floor was cold. Concrete. My wound had been roughly bandaged, and a dull ache throbbed in my arm. The room was empty. On the wall, a single sticky note. The handwriting was sharp and clean, no extra strokes. To unlock it, first ask yourself. Do you want the truth, or do you want to know your mother's choice? Signed with one name. Nix. I froze. Nix. The legendary dark web hacker. A ghost. A phantom who moved freely between languages and digital realms. Rumor had it she mastered memory wiping, ancient linguistic codes, even lost techniques for sealing consciousness. She cracked the most complex ancient programs, broken into countless forbidden archives. She wasn't a god. But gods were more predictable than her. I spent 3 hours calling in every contact, every channel, every code I had, trying to reach her. 3 minutes later, she replied. Tomorrow night. Abandoned bathhouse. Wear black. Come alone. If not, pretend this never happened. She never said please. She gave orders, like she'd known I would come all along. I stared at the screen, my fingers hot against the back of my phone. I knew there was no turning back. That page, that mark, my childhood, my mother's disappearance. And the thing I didn't want to admit. My obsession. Not just with the mystery. But with the silence behind a single sentence. She can know. And now. I have to know. The scent of mold and dust filled the ruins, like memories that had slept for years but never truly died. The walls were peeling, black stains hung from the ceiling, and a broken chandelier swung slowly, creaking in the wind. This used to be a bathhouse. Or more precisely, a space that once belonged to women's bodies, private, damp, broken like a desire that was never fully washed away. I arrived an hour early. Each step echoed in the hollow space. Time felt thick, like condensed moisture slowly gathering in the cracks between the tiles. The air was hot in a strangely intimate way, like a kiss from my memory, one that never actually landed, yet still lingered between layers of body heat. I sat by the edge of the old pool, back against the wall, palms sweating. Would she show up? Was she even real? Or just a ghost in this long escape of mine? I laughed at myself. Some people, some things, like fog in memory, the harder you try to grasp them, the blurrier they become. Until she appeared. She stepped through the broken entrance exactly on time, silently standing in front of me. She hadn't made an effort to muffle her steps, but somehow, no sound had arrived before her. I recognized her immediately. Not because I'd seen her face before, but because something about her felt unreasonably familiar. Like a version of myself I had forgotten, cold, sharp, restrained, and radiant. She was younger than I'd imagined. Maybe 25 or 26. Wearing a black leather jacket that fit cleanly over her shoulders, outlining a presence that was subtle yet oppressive. Her combat boots still had some mud on them. One earpiece dangled from her ear, swaying gently as she walked. Her fingers were spinning a USB drive, steady and almost taunting. Aseya Kalin. Mark bearer. Her voice was rough, like metal scraping glass, hoarse, cold, but not crude. There was distance in it, like every word had been measured before it hit. I didn't answer. Just stared into her eyes, dark, clear, a bit impatient, and somewhere beneath it, a familiarity I was afraid to name. You less worthy of a prophecy than I expected, she said, tilting her head. No mockery, just brutal honesty. And you Nix? I asked coldly. She scoffed, not even bothering to deny it. I go by Leah. Nix is just a goddess I like. I hate mythology. Don't believe in fate. Do you always start this arrogantly? She smirked, not amused, but like someone tired of hearing the same script. Only with girls who want to kiss me but won't admit it. That hit like a pebble thrown into still water. I flinched, just for a moment. She saw it instantly, and her smile deepened, glittering with challenge. See? That's what I mean. Maybe the prophecy was wrong, but a woman's eyes never lie. I stood up, putting space between us. People like her, too aware of their own magnetism, too skilled at pulling others in, were dangerous. Every movement she made felt like a trap, and I was one breath away from stepping right in. Relax, Kalin, she said, taking a step closer. Her voice dropped, low and sharp. I am not going to kiss you. Not tonight. She reached out her hand, palm up. Let me see the page. I didn't move. She tilted her head, eyes full of that I knew you do this expression. Not disappointment, just confirmation. Like a scene she rehearsed dozens of times was playing out exactly as planned. You don't trust me. I don't trust you. She leaned back against the wall. Her leather jacket made a soft grinding sound against the cement. But we have a common enemy. The Third Sigil Society, I said. She nodded. The USB never stopped spinning between her fingers. You want to know how your mother got mixed up with them? My heart skipped. Do you know where she is? I know what she left behind. But she didn't want you to find it. Why not? Because some answers are crueler than the questions. I was about to ask more. When footsteps echoed outside. Steady. Rhythmic. A team. Leah moved instantly. From her belt, she drew a sleek, silver interference rod, some kind of futuristic tech. It lit up blue, her fingers flying across the buttons. They're here, she said, her voice like a blade. Your choice, Kalin, come with me, or find your own way out. Just so you know, there aren't many. I gripped the page tighter, my pulse spiking. Why should I trust you? She didn't answer. Just ran toward a half-collapsed doorway, tossing one last line over her shoulder. Because I am all you've got now. And somehow, I couldn't look away from her. Not because she was saving me, she didn't move like a savior. It was something else. Something beautiful in its desperation. Like someone who trusted nothing. But if you chose her, she dismantled the whole world for you. I ran. Not because I trusted her. But because I suddenly wanted to know. Why her name was Leah. And how she saw through choices I never spoke out loud. Our footsteps echoed down the underground corridor, like two dice thrown by fate, hurried, uneven, and yet somehow bound to land where they must. Every gunshot behind us slammed into the air like a cruel reminder from the universe, time waits for no one. Go. They'd right behind us. I gasped. Blood had soaked through my sleeve, gluing fabric to the wound on my arm. It burned with every step. My head was spinning, but I couldn't afford to stop. Then, Leah stopped. There's no exit here. I shouted, panic cracking in my voice, bouncing off the stone walls and coming back like an echo of despair. It's not an exit, she said quietly, turning back to me with eerie calm. It's an entrance. She stood before a stone wall, covered in ancient runes. Her interference rod was off. Now, her fingers slowly traced the carvings, like she was spinning that USB again, graceful, focused, like she'd rehearsed this in her mind 1,000 times. The wall was etched with what looked like a language, half carved, half alive. Every stroke whispered. The markings looked chaotic, but I could sense a rhythm beneath them. And suddenly, I understood, this wasn't just a wall. It had been waiting for us. Why here? I asked, my voice shaking, not from fear of the people chasing us, but from the overwhelming familiarity of the wall. Like a nightmare from my childhood had taken form. Because the mark remembers, Leah murmured, her gaze drifting to my wrist. I looked down, and froze. The birthmark I had all my life, a spiral of interwoven lines I never understood, was glowing faintly. It mirrored the symbols on the wall, pulsing gently, as if answering a call. Then the heat came. Blazing, almost unbearable. Like something inside me was being pulled out, peeled away. I started, but didn't finish. My palm reached out on its own, pressing against the stone. The runes flared to life. Like stars opening their eyes in the night sky. A soft gold light flowed from the wall, spreading out from my fingertips. And then, the wall cracked. Silently. Splitting apart, millimeter by millimeter. She will remember all the dead, and become the gate of memory. The words appeared not on the wall, but in midair, as if burned into the space between us. Not written. Projected. Like flames spelling thought. Leah watched the gate open, a faint smile tugging at her lips, like a prophecy long mocked had just proved itself. Let us go, Kalin, she said gently. The gate of memory doesn't wait forever. I looked into the opening. Inside was a gray-white space, like mist, like clouds, like memories that hadn't yet been written. My heart thundered, but for the first time in a long while, my mind was clear. Step by step, I approached the threshold. Then her voice came again. Remember this, Aseya? She spoke softly, her words nearly drowned by the rumble of shifting stone. It's not the truth that drives people mad. It's the lies we want to believe. I turned to look at her. And in that moment, her face had lost its sharp edge, its teasing bravado. All that was left was a kind of sorrowful understanding. Like she had once stepped through the same gate. And paid too high a price. I nodded. And stepped into the gate of memory. Behind the door was a different world. Terrifyingly silent. No walls. No floor. Just endless white. It didn't feel like somewhere. It felt like nowhere. I took a few steps, no echo. Even my footsteps were swallowed by the silence. I looked around. And then it hit me, that deep, familiar loneliness. Not fear. But something sadder, heavier. This place felt like the bottom layer of a memory, what's left after all emotion has been drained. Where is this? Leah was behind me. I didn't even hear her follow. She didn't say a word, just walked up and stood beside me. She was slightly shorter than me. Just enough that I could sense her breathing, steady, but tight, like she was holding something in. I didn't know if she trusted me. But I knew we had stepped into a place where no one comes back the same. You followed me in, I murmured. She glanced at me. Calm, almost indifferent. I told you, you only have me now. That doesn't sound like a promise. It's not, she said, turning to the endless white. It's just the truth. Her profile looked clearer in the mist, like this place stripped away anything false. I felt a sudden urge to reach out. Not even sure why. To make sure she was real? Or to remind myself that I wasn't alone? I didn't touch her. But then she stepped closer. One breath between us. I am not your mother, she whispered. I want to keep your secrets. And I want to choose your path for you. Then what are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her hand, placed it gently on my wrist, still faintly warm from the symbol's glow. I am the one willing to face the truth with you. No matter how ugly it is. My chest clenched. That line cut deeper than any vow. It was real. And dangerous. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about finding my mother. This was about whether I was ready, truly ready, to take someone's hand and fall into the abyss of memory and lies. Her hand was warm. Behind us, the stone door slowly closed. Sealing the past outside. And locking us in. to whatever story hadn't yet been told. This was only the beginning. I thought I walked through that door to find my mother's answers. But I never expected what waited for me. A second message. Not ink on paper. A message written in blood. Leah stared at the wall where the red markings slowly emerged. For the first time, her expression changed. She looked scared. Barely holding it back. This isn't just the gate of memory, she said softly, almost to herself. This is the gate of choice. I turned to her, confused, ready to ask. But then a voice rang out. Not from my headset. Not from Leah. From the air itself. Welcome back, Aseya Kalin. Please choose, keep your memories or erase them all. I froze. My fingers were shaking. Leah's eyes widened. That system, it shouldn't be operational. Then, from the blood-stained wall, two names appeared. My name. And Leah Y. Kasser. I turned to her slowly. She stared at the wall, face pale, taking a step back. No. No, that's impossible. I never told you my last name. Silence. 1 second long. But it felt eternal. Then another door opened. Deeper. Darker. No light came through it. Only a voice. A woman's laugh. Low. Soft. I knew that laugh. I heard it before. It was my mother's voice. To be continued. Just as she tried to read that memory, the space around her began to shake. And then, her mother spoke for the first time. You were never meant to exist. Episode of Spirit Mark is coming soon, with even more shocking truths. The line between what's real and what's not is about to shatter. Are you ready? If you're enjoying this series, give this video a like. It's the biggest motivation for me to keep going. What do you think Aseya will choose next? Will she believe her mother's words, or trust her own memories? Drop your predictions in the comments below. I'll pick one to read out in the next episode. Share this with friends who love mystery, adventure, and a little sapphic tension. And let them fall into the world of Spirit Mark too. See you in the next episode.